Have you ever thought about starting your own country? Many of us are a little bit tired of the current country for a number of different reasons. If you've been following this channel for some time, you know we complain a lot about it. Got a lot of issues with our justice system, with a lot of the limitations that we're seeing on free speech. And I'm not alone. According to the AP, there is a new intelligence report that is sharing a grim view of the global future. So if you're sitting there also a little bit dissatisfied with your country, the state of affairs in our political world, you're not alone. This article is, as I mentioned, from the AP, written by Eric Tucker, posted today. It says Washington, U.S. intelligence officials are painting a dark picture of the world's future, writing in a report released on Thursday that the coronavirus pandemic has deepened economic inequality, strained government resources, and fanned nationalist sentiments. And we're going to go through this segment of this show. This is going to be a little bit of depression, right? We're going to see some stuff that just sounds terrible. It sounds awful. We're talking about a lot of the failures of our government and our elected officials. But I want you to have hope. And I don't want this segment to be too ranty. And I want us to think about this from a problem solution perspective. We're identifying a problem. We're going to propose a solution. There's a lot of hope in this conversation that we're having. And I want to just frame this out. So even though this might seem like we're going down a dark hole here, stick with it because there's a lot of optimism, a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. Those assessments are included in a global trends report by the government's National Intelligence Council, a document produced every 4 years. This year's report is designed to help policymakers and citizens anticipate the economic, environmental, and technological demographic forces likely to shape the world throughout the next 20 years. We're looking forward 20 years. The document focuses heavily on the impact of the pandemic, calling it the most significant singular global disruption since World War II, with health, economic, political, and security implications that will ripple for years to come. Nations in different parts of the world set new records on Thursday for COVID-19 deaths and new infections, underscoring the lingering global toll of the virus. COVID-19 has shaken long-held assumptions about resilience and adaptation and created new uncertainties about the economy, governance, geopolitics, technology, all of it, the report says. Document finds cause for concern in virtually all aspects of life. Sounds pretty rough, but it does get better. The report continues on, and it says it warns, for instance, the effects of climate change are likely to worsen the problem of food, water insecurity in poor countries, going to hasten global migration. Though health, education, and household prosperity have made historic improvements in recent decades, continued progress will be hard to sustain because of headwinds, not only from the effects of the pandemic, but also aging populations and potentially slower global economic growth. Advances in technology have the potential to address problems, including climate change and disease, but can also provoke new tensions. We're going to talk about this technology. What is this? State and non-state rivals will vie for leadership and dominance in science and technology, with potentially cascading risks and implications for economic, military, societal security. The report also warns of eroding trust in government and institutions and of a, quote, trust gap between the general public and the better informed and educated parts of the population. So you see how just dripping with disdain this is? The general public has a trust gap, but the better informed and educated parts of the population don't. So why would there be a trust gap? Why would there be a segment of this population of our society here in the United States or throughout the world that just doesn't really trust our government as much anymore? Naturally, I'm inclined to be anti-establishment. I'm a criminal defense attorney. My day job, our whole team here is dedicated to making sure the government stays in their place, doesn't encroach on our liberties. So I'm naturally inclined to be that way. But it's not just because of my profession. There are many people who feel the same way. They have a lot of disdain for what they see happening around us. And so when I was thinking about this framework, I wanted to brainstorm a little bit, see if I could come up with a reason why this trust gap might be so big. Why are people just generally distrustful of government these days? Let's think if we can brainstorm some possibilities. Could it be because the government has catastrophically failed repeatedly, time and time again? Let's take a look at some examples. First and foremost, let's start off with COVID. COVID showed us where some of the biggest gaps in the performance of our government exist. We can start off something that is very basic, very easy, something that should have been very easy to satisfy and to fulfill. the provision of information to the general public. We were in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody knew what to do. Everybody was freaked out. Our government is supposed to be prepared to help us through this, right? Why did they botch this so badly? The first catastrophic government failure, massive informational mismanagement. They lied to us about the masks. They told us don't wear masks, then mask up, then wear 2 masks, then get vaccinated. Dr. Fauci's still wearing masks. They also told us about lockdowns, right? We have differing opinions on the science of lockdowns, whether they work, whether they don't. We see California versus Florida. We have a lot of back and forth about vaccines. They were killing us over vaccines. Donald Trump said it'll be here by April. They said, no, it won't. You're a liar. You're an idiot. And there's no medical expertise who supports your claim here. So major issues, right? The government failed. And you can say it's Trump's fault. You can say it's Biden's fault. You could say it's Obama's fault. You could say it's George Bush's fault. I don't care who it is. The point of this criticism is not to condemn any one particular party or any one particular politician. It's to point out the systemic failures that exist in our government and in our society. And I think people on both sides of the aisle, maybe for once in our lives, can agree on that the government is not serving your ends. Your ends might be different. You might say you want more social justice. You might say I want more economic freedom. Regardless, the government is not serving your ends. I think we can all agree on that. So as I continue going through this list, that's the context. I'm not trying to blame Trump, not trying to blame Fauci, not trying to blame Obama, not trying to blame Clinton, none of them. It's government in general has become a catastrophic failure. And so we know that they botched the information that they were supposed to give us. Something very basic. We all have the internet. We all have cell phones and email. They couldn't notify us about what proper procedures were, or at least get their act together about what was real and what wasn't, rather than lying to us. What else failed? Healthcare failed. And this was a military failure. In many ways, the military was supposed to be prepped and ready to rock and roll. We have FEMA. We have all of these massive multi-billion-dollar departments at the federal government. They're supposed to make sure that our country's prepared for this stuff, and we weren't. Healthcare failed. Hospitals overloaded. All sorts of surgeries were canceled. People couldn't go see their doctors. Everybody was quarantined. Took us a long time. We were totally under-equipped with PPE. Totally understaffed. I had family in the hospital for 48 days. My younger brother, who has Down syndrome, almost died 3 times. My mom was in the hospital with him, and they told me about the conditions there, and it was a war zone. And their experience is not unique to them or our family. It's happening all across the country. Why were we so underprepared? Government failed. One of their primary responsibilities is continuity. They couldn't keep it together. Healthcare system was buckling around the country for a long period of time. Next up, massive infrastructure failures. What else are we talking about? We have everything is failing around this country. We got brownouts, right? California has rolling brownouts basically every summer. Probably going to see those again. They can't even keep their stinking lights on. They also have wildfires. Huge swaths of the state are just burning down regularly. Texas, if you want to make sure this isn't political, Texas doesn't have any good particular infrastructure either, right? They had a massive freeze that caused considerable havoc in their state. The government failed. The federal government was non-responsive. Schools. There are still parts of this country, as far as I can understand, as far as I can tell, that are not open. We have children in this country who have gone almost an entire year without education or very subpar education. Half days, Zoom meetings for 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds. The educational system in this country has failed. It's buckled under the weight of COVID, under the weight of our government. They couldn't even protect the Capitol building, folks. There was warnings time and time again, apparently, that this was going to be a big thing. They couldn't even protect an official government building. That's how incompetent they are as to infrastructure. How about the border? We just talked about this in an earlier segment. 170,000+ people crossed in March. They cannot control a border. What good is a nation if you don't have defined borders? And I don't mean control the border by putting up an impenetrable barricade there. Right? I don't even care what the policy is, whether it's a hard policy, nobody comes in, or it's an open policy, everybody comes in. I don't care. The point is they can't control it. Policy is irrelevant. The issue is still open because they can't solve it. They've been trying to solve this issue for 35, 40 years. As long as I've been alive, probably longer than that. Still can't fix it. Why is that? Because the government has failed. It's a catastrophic failure. They are also degrading the faith in our justice system. Okay, we're seeing that right now. We're talking about Derek Chauvin and the Chauvin trial regularly on this channel. Basically, nobody who's watching that trial thinks that there's justice happening right now. Why is that? Half the country thinks that this is a racist cop who murdered a black man. The other half thinks that this is a media woke fueled narrative that is covering for a drug addict. And they're making him a hero while an innocent officer is put on trial. Nobody has faith in the system. Why should they? We see political prosecutions taking place in this country. We saw all of the Capitol Hill rioters get put in custody, not given any bail. We saw a Court of Appeals judge recently overturn that because it was a political prosecution. It was improper. Judge reversed that. A lot of these Antifa cases, same thing. We saw here in Arizona, protesters were arrested for peacefully protesting. Why is that? Because everything's politicized. The justice system has become weaponized. It's being used for political prosecutions on both sides of the aisle. Then you have the untouchables. You have the people who can get away with anything. We've got Hunter Biden running around right now, committed multiple crimes, writing a memoir and doing a bunch of interviews all over the place. You've got Ghislaine Maxwell, right? She's in custody. She sort of was floating around untouchable for a very long period of time. You have other politicians who get away with whatever they want. Operate with impunity. Nobody has any faith in the justice system. Fundamental liberties are eroding in real time. We see this happening. Free speech access is dwindling down every day. Now, you might say these are private companies. Facebook and Twitter, they have full authority to do that. They can do whatever they want to do. Practically speaking, you as an American, your free speech, every time one of those private companies does that, is getting whittled away. It's shrinking. You may be okay with that, but a lot of people in this country are not, because the First Amendment is fundamental. There's a reason that it exists. Second Amendment rights, those are getting whittled away. We just saw Joe Biden yesterday coming out with an executive order saying that he's going to now really work back on guns, and that no constitutional amendment is even without limit or is unlimited. So he can come in and start limiting your rights that are dictated in the Constitution. Your freedom of association, your freedom of expression, all limited. Many people can't even leave their homes in different parts of the world or this country. Can't even get together. We spent our whole year this time. I'm seeing images of grandparents seeing their grandkids after 1 year in isolation from each other in America in 2021. And you're going, what? The private sector is superseding and supplanting the federal government. Google, Amazon, SpaceX, and Tesla. Amazon is running CIA servers on their servers. Google controls basically all of the information on the planet at this point in time. NASA fell apart. Guess what replaced it? SpaceX did. Government's been screaming about climate change for decades, ever since I was a kid. Who comes in and actually makes some progress on that? Tesla does. How do they do it? Invent a car, invent a satellite system called Starlink, solar panels, battery technology. They come in, they are able to solve what the federal government was unable to solve. SpaceX, launching rockets up regularly. NASA fell apart, mostly a disaster. Because the federal government's not good at that stuff anymore. There is uncontrolled spending. There is printing of money happening regularly. We're now 28.1 trillion in debt, 3.2 trillion in deficits, raising taxes on everybody now, not to mention the massive inflation that is projected to be coming forward after all of this new money is just printed. That bill is going to come due. And if you want to talk about not only our internal problems domestically here in the United States, and that's about our finances, this is basically something that we see all over the world at this point. Nobody is outside of this. Every single country failed. There's not one country as a result of the COVID situation that came out and everybody was like, dang, they really crushed it. Sort of equal levels of bad around the world, the United States included. Historically, the United States has been a global leader in the world. We've been leading on human rights. We've been leading on all sorts of innovations that increase the benefits that we as people experience on a regular basis. Not really doing that anymore. We have virtually zero global leadership. Have taken basically no action in Hong Kong. We see the incursions by the Chinese into that democratic state. The Uyghurs, not doing anything on it. All of our politicians are just kicking the can down the road, looking the other way. Major Fortune 500 CEO companies, everybody's just turning a blind eye to them. What's going on over there? I predict we're probably going to see some incursions into Taiwan. That's going to be a complicated thing in the next 4 years, if not decade. World Health Organization was a total joke during COVID. China has been largely unchecked. Trump was doing what he could, but climate change, we know that the Chinese are now building, I think I saw a headline, more coal power plants than you can even quantify. I mean, it's such a big number. Meanwhile, here in Arizona or in the United States, we're talking about marginal improvements to climate emissions and things like that. We're killing ourselves over it. Meanwhile, they're exacerbating the problem to a degree that we can't even comprehend here. Massive catastrophic failures. The government has failed repeatedly, time and time again. And this was something that was happening anyways, right? We've been talking about a lot of this, that there's just this slow degradation of society that we're sort of witnessing in front of our eyes. And it's a little bit unnerving, right? Makes you feel kind of terrible. Like, what can we do about this? If you recall on this channel, we've been talking about a digital bill of rights. We were seeing Trump get kicked off the internet. We're seeing other people get deplatformed, demonetized. We got demonetized. We got thrown off of Discord. We have been censored as a result of just trying to engage in a very nice, peaceful conversation, going through some facts, going through some analysis, doing some legal analysis, looking at lawsuits. Too bad. You're cut off. They don't want you to partake in the same conversation that they can partake in. So we've been getting pretty tired of it. It gets a little bit frustrating. But as I said at the start of this segment, there is hope. And this is a good thing. It's better for us to recognize that maybe this old system isn't working out so well for us anymore. Maybe there's a different way to think about this. And I know when I first started thinking about this, I was thinking, I love America. I love this country. I love the freedoms and the foundation that it has laid out for me in my life. I love the concepts. I got a thrill out of reading and learning and understanding how this country was formulated. And I have a special affection for it. And I'm not willing to just abandon the country. But we can think about incorporating some of the best aspects of America into something new and better. And I want to flesh out what that looks like. How to Start a New Country, written by Balaji Srinivasan, posted today, April 9th. It's an 8-minute read, but we're going to take a little bit longer with it. He posted this over on his website, 1729.com, 1729.com, and he's asking for a review of this article, which is going to start now. How to Start a New Country. The network state is built cloud first. Land last. The network state is the concept of the new world that we're going to be building, the new country. It's built first in the cloud. It's built land last. Rather than starting with the physical territory, we begin with a digital community. Balaji Srinivasan, angel investor, co-founder of Earn, Council, Teleport, Coin Center, formerly the CTO of Coinbase, GP at Andreessen Horowitz. I hear this Bitcoin thing might be kind of a big deal. So he's a crypto guy. Much more than that. Extremely prolific, massive thinker, created a lot of big startup companies, and he's working in this space, and he's got some pretty brilliant ideas. Let's go through them. Why would you start a new country is where we start. We want to be able to peacefully start a new country for the same reason we want a bare plot of earth, a blank sheet of paper, an empty text buffer, a fresh startup, or a clean slate, because we want to build something new without historical constraint. Financial demand for a clean slate is clear. People buy millions of acres of vacant land and incorporate hundreds of thousands of new companies each year, spending billions just to get that fresh start. And now that it is possible to start not just new companies, but also new communities and even new currencies, we see people flocking to create those as well. And so you look over here, key takeaways, national vacant land sales over the last 10 years, the national average price for land has tripled to $350,000 per transaction. And you'll see as Balaji is writing, he's linking to different stories. And so we're going to clip some of those as we go along. Talking about new currencies, we have Bitcoin, market cap, 1 trillion. Ethereum, 239 billion market cap. Bitcoin, Binance coin, 68 billion. Massive amount of money we're talking about in these new currencies. The societal value of a clean slate is also clear. In the technology sector alone, the ability to form new companies has created literally trillions of dollars in wealth over the past few decades. Indeed, if we imagine a world where you couldn't just obtain a blank sheet of paper but had to erase an older one, where you couldn't just acquire bare land but had to knock down a standing building, where you couldn't just create a new company but had to reform an existing firm, we imagine endless conflict over scarce resources because you have to fight over this stuff. So what if we were able to just start fresh? What if we were able to re-envision free speech and taxation and criminal justice and all of the rights that we hold dear now in a new format, in a new version for 2021? We can do it using this technology. His article continues, perhaps we don't have to think too hard to imagine this world. It resembles our own. In the distant past, people could only write on clay tablets like we see here. In the recent past, they were executed for contemplating entrepreneurship. Like in 1978, there was a Chinese village that gathered in a mud hut to sign a secret contract, which started their entrepreneurial journey. In the immediate present, they are arguing now over replacing an ancient gas station. Like in San Francisco, the future of San Francisco gas station is up for debate. Kind of a silly thing to be debating right now. In these times and places, making a fresh start was technologically infeasible, politically impossible, or even judicially punishable. You could not start new. And that's where we are today with countries, with cities, with nations, with governments, and with much of the physical world. Because the brand new is unthinkable, we fight over the old. But perhaps we can change that. Maybe we don't need to keep fighting over this stuff. Maybe we don't need to have battles over all of these little minutia and details. Why don't we just create a new world? His article continues. So how do we do it? How do we start a new country? There are at least 6 ways to start new countries that have been publicly discussed. 3 are conventional and 3 are unconventional. We will introduce them only to deprioritize them, all in favor of a 7th. Number 1 way to start a new country, through an election. Just had one of those. Was a lot of fun, wasn't it? This is the most conventional way to start a new country. Involves winning sufficient power in an election, either to rewrite the laws of an existing state or to carve out a new one from scratch with the consent of the international community, like this country right here, called the Repubblica Democratica de Timor. This is the most widely discussed path and by far the most crowded. Many people care about this avenue, perhaps too many. The next way to start a country, revolution. The second obvious way is to carry off a political revolution. We don't advise attempting this. Particularly momentous elections are sometimes referred to as revolutions, though a revolution frequently involves bloodshed. Revolutions are infrequent, but everyone knows what they mean and that they mean a new government. So like we see here in the French Revolution, the storming of the Bastille in July 1789. The third way to start a new country is war. Conventional way is to win a war. We don't advise attempting this either. A war is, of course, not independent from the other two. Indeed, both elections and revolutions can, in fact, lead to wars that end up carving out new polities. Like a revolution, a war is infrequent and undesirable, but again, widely known means by which a national border may be rewritten. And so over here we see World War II, the biggest war. So those are 3 ways that we can do it. Those are more conventional ways. What about the unconventional ways? Well, how about micronations? Now we get to the unconventional, the most obvious of the unconventional approaches, and the one most people think of when they hear a concept of starting a new country occurs when an eccentric plants a flag on an oil platform or a disputed patch of dirt and declares themselves king of nothing. See over here, we have the Principality of Sealand. According to Wikipedia, it's a micronation. Here's their flag, here's their coat of arms, and here's what they look like. It's a chunk of concrete and metal in the middle of the ocean. If the issue with elections is that too many people care about them, the issue with these so-called micronations is that too few people care. Because a state, like a currency, is an inherently social affair, a few people in the middle of nowhere will not be able to organize a military or enforce laws or be recognized by other nations, because there's not enough people. Moreover, while an existing state may be content to let people harmlessly LARP, or live action role play, which we can see over here, right? These are 2 people role-playing, fighting using foam weapons to duel. We see this a lot on the internet. They can LARP a fake country in their backyard. An actual threat to sovereignty typically produces a response with real guns. So he's saying you can just go, make believe that you live in your own country, but if you really do, they're going to come at you with guns. Another way to start a country, seasteading. Here we start to get interesting. Conceived by Patry Friedman and backed by Peter Thiel, big name. Seasteading essentially starts with the observation that cruise ships exist and asks whether we could move from a few weeks on the water at a time to a semi-permanent habitation on international waters, with frequent docking, of course. As the cost of cruise ships has fallen recently, this approach is becoming more feasible, but we haven't seen a working example yet. And you can look down here. This is what it looks like. So they actually have some artist renderings, or I'm not sure if those are real or not, but it's a conversation that's happening. Next up, how can you start a country? Well, be like Elon, go up to space. Perhaps the most prestigious of the Start a New Country paths is the idea of colonizing other planets. Unlike seasteading or Micronations, space exploration started at the government level and has been glamorized in many movies and TV shows, so it enjoys a higher degree of social acceptability. People mainly think of it as currently technically infeasible rather than outright crazy. Elon is SpaceX one entity seriously contemplating the logistics of starting a new state on Mars. And so this was posted over on Reddit in the Starlink forum. Starlink is Elon's satellite program. So he's launching all of these sort of micro satellites up into orbit and creating this curtain, essentially, this net almost of satellites that encompass the planet like a Dyson sphere. And it's sending internet to everybody. So you don't need to be tethered to your pseudo-governmental corporation utility company that provides you internet. You can just go anywhere in the world without a physical Ethernet landline connection, get beamed internet from Starlink. So they posted on Reddit a paragraph from the terms of service. If you want to use that internet, got to agree to the TOS, right? What does it say? For services provided to, on, or in orbit around the planet Earth or the moon, these terms and any disputes between us arising out of or related to these terms, including disputes regarding arbitrability, will be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of California in the United States. For services provided on Mars or in transit to Mars via Starship or other colonization spacecraft, the parties recognize Mars as a free planet and that no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Martian activities. Accordingly, disputes, capital D, will be settled through self-governing principles established in good faith at the time of Martian settlement. So we're not taking your constitution to Mars, okay? Says Elon. So that's another way to do it. You can form a country that way. Hop on over at SpaceX, the next rocket, land on Mars, form your own country. Or the seventh way, the way that Balaji is discussing and advocating is by creating a cloud country. Cloud countries. Finally, we arrive at our preferred method, the cloud country. Our idea is to proceed cloud first, land last. Rather than starting with the physical territory, we start with a digital community. We recruit online for a group of people interested in founding a new virtual social network, a new city, and eventually a new country. We build the embryonic state as an open source project. We organize our internal economy around remote work. We cultivate in-person levels of civility. We simulate architecture in VR. We create art and literature that reflects our values. Over time, we eventually crowdfund territory in the real world, but not necessarily contiguous territory, because an underappreciated fact is that the internet allows us to network enclaves. Put another way, a cloud community need not acquire all its territory in one place at one time. It can connect 1,000 apartments, 100 houses, and a dozen cul-de-sacs in different cities into a new fractal polity with its capital in the cloud. Over time, community members migrate between these enclaves and crowdfund territory nearby, with every individual dwelling or group house presenting an independent opportunity for expansion. This is an expletive diagram of territorial discontinuities, enclaves, and exclaves. You can see how this is working. You have A's, A3, A2, A3, A5, A4, A3. You've got B's, you've got E's with some A's in the middle, with another E in the middle. And you're organizing remotely and digitally. We've described here thus far is much like the concept of ethnic diasporas, which are internationally dispersed but connected by communication channels with each other and the motherland. The twist is that our version is a reverse diaspora, a community that forms first on the internet, builds culture online, and only then comes together in person to build dwellings and structures. In a sense, you can think of each physical outpost of this digital community as a cloud embassy, similar to the grassroots Bitcoin embassies that have arisen around the world. New recruits can come to either the virtual or physical environment, beta test, and decide to leave or stay. Now, with all this talk of embassies in countries, one might contend that cloud countries like the aforementioned Micronations, they're just a LARP. They're just a live action role play. It's a bunch of internet geeks goofing around on the internet thinking that they're part of a country. However, unlike micro-donations, they are set up to be a scaled LARP, a feat of imagination practiced by large numbers of people at the same time. And the experience of cryptocurrencies over the last decade shows us just how powerful such a shared LARP can be. Yeah, it's a LARP. Yeah, we're all going to be role-playing for a little while, but we're going to scale this puppy, and we're going to scale it big, and that's going to give us some leverage to negotiate with different surrounding nation states to go create some deals, get some land, set up shop, run your own network state. Minimum necessary innovation. Let's pause and summarize for a second. The main difference between the seventh method, cloud countries, and the previous six, election, revolution, war, micronations, seasteading, and space, is that it straddles the boundary of practicality and impracticality. No one can claim that it's infeasible to build million-person online communities or billion-dollar digital currencies, or that it's impossible to architect buildings in VR and then crowdfund them. The cloud country concept just requires stacking together many existing technologies rather than inventing new ones like Mars-capable rockets or permanent habitation seasteads. Yet at the same time, it avoids the obvious pathways of election, revolution, and war, all of which are ugly and none of which provide much venue for individual initiative. We already know we can create billion-dollar currencies. We've got several of them. We already know that we can create million-person online communities. We've got many of those. In other words, the cloud country concept takes the most robust existing tech stack we have, namely the suite of technologies built around the internet, and to route around political roadblocks without waiting for future physical innovation. We take the suite of technologies we've already built, we route around the political roadblocks without waiting for future physical innovation. So it's something that can start now. What counts as a new country, you might be asking yourself. How do we figure this out? How do we scale this up so that we can become a country? How do you define that? Having outlined these 7 methods, the careful reader will notice that we played a bit fast and loose with the definition of what a new country is. First, what do we mean by a new country? One definition is that starting a new country means settling a wholly new territory like colonizing Mars. Another definition is that simply changing the form of government actually changes the country, like going from the Second French Republic to the Second French Empire. Rather than using this strict or loose definition, we're going to use both numerical and societal definitions of a new country. The numerical definition begins with visualizing a nationrealestatepop.com site similar to CoinMarketCap.com, where the number of cloud country members, the acreage, so forget all of that, where the number of cloud country members, the acreage of real estate owned by those members, and the on-chain GDP, so the gross domestic product of this cloud, of the transactions that are happening in this new network state, those are tracked in real time. Eventually, a cloud country of 5 million people worldwide that have thousands of square miles that are discontiguous, community-owned land, and billions in annual income demands recognition. Of course it does. 5 million people, thousands of square miles, community owned, billions in annual income. This in turn leads us to the societal definition. A new country is a new member of the United Nations, one that is internationally recognized by other countries as a legitimate polity capable of self-determination. This combination of absolute and relative metrics matches the emergence of cryptocurrency. Initially ignored, then mocked as an obvious failure, within 5 years after its invention, Bitcoin hit $1 billion market capitalization, a numerical success, subsequently listed on CNBC, Bloomberg alongside blue chip stocks. a form of societal recognition. At each step, Bitcoin could keep ascending numerically on its own with greater societal recognition following its wake. By 2020, it had changed the trajectory of the People's Bank of China, the IMF, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the World Bank, and others, I'm sure. Cryptocurrency was able to achieve these heights because money has both technical and political aspects. The numbers could be piled up before these societal accolades followed. Once Bitcoin had proven that it couldn't be easily counterfeited or hacked, the shared belief of the tens of millions of cryptocurrencies holders worldwide was enough to get Bitcoin from a market cap of 0 to a market cap of 1 trillion. From there to a listing on every Bloomberg terminal. You'll notice here, active crypto traders across the globe, June 2019, 15 million people in North America, 10 million in Europe. And the numbers are just going to keep going up and up and up. So let's finish out this story and ask ourselves, could a sufficiently robust cloud country with, say, 1 to 10 million committed digital citizens, provable cryptocurrency reserves, and physical holdings all over the earth similarly achieve societal recognition from the UN? A cloud country with a population of this size would actually fit right in the middle of the pack globally. As of out of the 193 UN recognized states, approximately 20% of those existing countries have a population of less than 1 million, and 55% have a population of less than 10 million. This includes countries that people think of as real. Places like Luxembourg, that has 615,000, Cyprus, 1.18 million, Estonia, 1.3, New Zealand, 4.7, Ireland, 4.8, Singapore, 5.8, and so on. So if you could get 10 million people together, you're bigger than all of those countries. These, quote, user counts, or citizens, are surprisingly small numbers by tech standards. Of course, mere quantity isn't everything. The strength of affiliation to our hypothetical cloud country matters, as does the time spent on the property, the percentage of net worth stored in the currency, and the fraction of the contracts found in the community. Still, once we remember that Facebook has 3 billion users, Twitter has 300 million, and many individual influencers have more than 1 million followers alone, it starts to not be too crazy to imagine we can build a 1 to 10 million person social network with a genuine sense of national consciousness, an integrated cryptocurrency, and a plan to crowdfund many pieces of territory around the world. With the internet, we can digitally sew these disjoint enclaves together into a new kind of polity, a network state. The next step is to describe exactly how we might go about this. And so if you want to learn more about it, you should go sign up for Balaji's newsletter. Go to 1729.com. And the way that this is working is he's releasing new stories and he's going to tell you what comes next. So you want to sign up for his email at 1729.com to get on that list, because the next step is coming in his next post. So very, very interesting idea. I like it, and I'm excited to see where this goes and see how I can participate in it. And so if you like this idea, if you like even thinking about this just to do a little bit of mental gymnastics, well worth your time. Balaji's brilliant. A lot of great interviews with him on YouTube, and well worth a follow on Twitter. So let's take a look at some questions on this topic from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Joe Snow says, how about an IQ test requirement to serve for Congress? Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm not real sure that's going to solve much of anything. I think all it's going to show us is that we have a bunch of morons who want to run for office, which we already know. We have Osak says, Rob, I'm not in a conspiracy, but the rate speed the current political party that's in power is trying to change everything in this country, one might start to think Trump is coming back way sooner than for 4 years. I can't think of another reason why. Maybe you might have a reason. Well, I think they just see this as an open opportunity, right? They have a unique situation right now where they have control of the White House. They have control of the House of Representatives. They control the Senate technically. They know that's probably going to change in about 1 year and 6 months. And so they're trying to ram as much stuff through as they can while they can, because they know that time is running out. Next up, we got Tree Mendez says, I think part of the problem is that politicians and media don't listen to people. For example, after the riots, polls showed something like 74% want the same amount of police or more, and 80 or 90 something percent want to see their police reform. But the two sides continue to push for either defund the police, or at the very least, all police are bad, or all police are good. Polls have been taken about voting. Most people either want IDs or are okay with them. They don't care. Georgia law is racist. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, the media just does whatever they want to do, really, and so do the politicians, as we know. Want to Know says, is this Rob's farewell speech? So, well, I hope not. I hope not. I am not uploading myself to the cloud yet. We'll see. Maybe that happens in the future. But no, I am going to be here for the foreseeable future. But I am very interested in what Balaji is doing. And yeah, maybe I'll go to Balaji Land or Cloudlandia, whatever happens in that new country. Nadar Blasier says, and on top of it, we have 140 administrative state unelected officials begging for a new 9/11 commission because of the capital S. Gets my blood pressure up. Letter from a former senior national security military elected officials calling on Congress to create a bipartisan 1/6 commission. We are former senior blah, 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 establish an independent, investigate the assault, strengthen the resilience of our democratic institutions, great urgency, immediate security failings. Got it. All right. So we know what that is. Nadar says, this is an amazing quote on the role of government from 1776. Proclamation by the General Court, 19 January 1776. A proclamation by the General Court. The frailty of human nature, the wants of individuals, and the numerous dangers which surround them through the course of life have in all ages and in every country impelled them to form societies and establish governments. As the happiness of the people alone is the sole end of government, so the consent of the people is the only foundation of it in reason, morality, and the natural fitness of things. And therefore, every act of government, every exercise of sovereignty against or without the consent of the people is injustice, usurpation, and tyranny. I agree with that. That's what I'm talking about. In our new country, we just go back to that standard, which is a much better standard than currently. Right now, I feel like a lot of people are living their lives with consent of the government. Government says, you can go outside now, everybody. Go ahead. We'll allow you to go outside. Be good out there, because if you're not, we're going to tell you to go back inside. Oh, God, we get to go live our lives now. No. That's not the default. Freedom is the default. The government has to operate on our approval, on our authority, not the other way around. And a long time ago, something flipped in this country where that dynamic changed, and that needs to be reversed. And the only way that can be reversed, I think at this point in time, is option number 7, the network state. Jeremy Matrita says, people still have to exist in the physical world. No matter where we are, we still need physical infrastructure and follow local laws. Yes, that's true, Jeremy, but here's the point. When you create a cloud network, when you create a network state, here's what the end goal is. And I know this is sort of, let me put it in terms that we understand. Amazon, huge company. What did they do when they were renegotiating their headquarters too? They asked states to basically bid to invite them there. What can you give us in order for us to move our headquarters to your city and your state? Give us some tax cuts, give us whatever, right? They negotiated with the government. Why? Because the government was willing to acquiesce to them, because Amazon has leverage. They're going to move 25,000 people in there. You know what that's going to do for your economy? You know what that's going to do for your unemployment levels? All of these people are going to have to work in surrounding areas, and it's going to be a boom for your city. So people were bending over backwards. Do you remember that? It was like a reality TV show. This city's in contention. No, this city's in contention. No, they're going to give them this many millions in tax breaks and so on. And it turns out Amazon was scamming everybody. They knew where they were going. They wanted to go in New York and Washington, in the financial capital and the political capital, for good reason. But they still made everybody negotiate over having them show up. So when you get 10 million people who are a part of a community, who are a part of a cloud state, a part of the network state of your choosing, you have some pretty damn good leverage on the order of Amazon. Even more than that. And so if you have a group of people who are willing to be mobile, who are willing to just uproot themselves and say, you know what, tired of paying these taxes here, tired of paying for this and this and this and this and this, I am going to go move with my network state in an organized fashion. We're going to negotiate with an actual nation state and say, we want to carve out. We're going to bring 10 million people over here. In exchange for that, we don't want you to interfere with our operations at all. Maybe you get some there, right? Maybe you get some people who negotiate with you. All right, listen, we're going to let you operate within these confines, but not within these confines. And you negotiate a treaty just like you would anywhere else in the world. Because you have bought property, right? You've accumulated property, and you start moving those resources around So you do have your own rules, but you have to have the ability to pick up and move, and you have to be willing to do that. And there are a lot of people who would be willing to do that down the line, right? I'm not ready or in a position to do that now, but if it requires me to pick up and move to find more freedom, willing to make that exchange. So this is a long-term play, but you build leverage, you negotiate with the originating nation state, create your own country based on leverage and the community. Pretty interesting. Joe Snow says, I'm down to either just go vote or go to Mars. Just vote or go to Mars. Either one. Either one. If there's a seat on the rocket, I'll take the rocket. But if there's not, I'm just going to go down to my polling place. It's fair, Joe. It's fair. Very reasonable also. Want to Know says, what country in the world are going to give you land, going to get crowded real quick? Living in space or Mars is a real global warming. But how do you keep current country one in from not taking money for taxes? How does that work? So I kind of just explained that, but you build leverage and you go negotiate that out. So you get 5 million people. You say, hey, we'll move over there. This is what we want. These are our extensions. Okay, we'll collect some taxes. We'll give you some of that at a much lower rate, and you just work it out, right? And the world is big enough. You'll be able to find a pocket somewhere. Now that might mean you have to move into the middle of somewhere, right? Some place that's totally unpopulated. You pick a plane in Africa. Everybody moves to Africa. All right. Right? Got to be willing to do that. And that may be one of the sacrifices. So, you're not going to get San Francisco to give their town to you. But maybe you will on other ones. Ma Fox says, I still love you guys, but again, the anarcho-capitalism arc is so strange and foreign to me. Well, that's good, Ma. I'm glad you still love us. Now, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be talking about these issues, but you may hear about some more of this stuff. I think this is a very interesting concept, something that's built on the back of blockchain. So if this just doesn't ring your bell, just pull the ejection cord, just bail out of there. But I think this is important because I think there are some pretty fundamental problems in our society that would be solved if we were able to at least start thinking in these ways. Thinking about shedding the old container that we were living in, right? And so if you listen to Balaji, in one of his interviews, he talks about he doesn't talk about it in terms of containers. I think container is the word that I use, but he's sort of walking us through the evolution of the state, whatever that is. And so if you go back towards the Greek and Roman days, what do we have? We had a god state, right? We had people who were living under the thumb of gods. We had multiple gods. We had big structures worshiping them. We had people who were operating and living their lives under that structure, that power structure, God. Then that evolved and we sort of developed nation states. Germany, England, United States, Mexico, Canada, China, elsewhere. Now we're living under the pressure of the state, the physical state. But these were mostly created, at least here in the United States, in the 1700s. And we were operating according to 1700 ideals and technologies. So the world is evolving a little bit. A lot of those principles are still part of natural life. They're immutable characteristics, fundamental principles that we think are so dear that we can carry those over into the new state, the next version of what that is. So you go from a God state to a nation state to a network state. And the container for societal improvement just changes as we continue to evolve. And so, yes, you may be looking back at your old country or your old structure, your power polity, and say, man, I got a lot of reverence for that. That feels good. But maybe we start thinking about this as maybe that is just something that is no longer serving us as humanity. Like getting a haircut. When your hair is on your head, it's very important. Anything happens to it, it's a big problem. As soon as you cut it off and it hits the ground, it's meaningless to you. It means nothing anymore. Something that at one instance was so important, so vital, as soon as it hits the ground, it's done. It's dead. It's no longer a part of you. And so, yes, there are some amazing things about America that maybe you just incorporate into a parallel government for a period of time or a parallel community, a network state that you can grow into. And as one entity fades into the distance, into the bin of history, the other evolves and you join along with it. Patriot Musk says, this is the part where Rob rips his face off, revealing he is Elon Musk, conditioning us to do his bidding. I know. It's a different segment. It's Friday. I am really, really having a lot of fun with this idea and this concept, and I think it is just so interesting. So I'd encourage you to go check out Mr. Srinivasan over at 1729.com. I am not Elon Musk. My computing power in my brain is not, we're talking like a Pentium 486 relative to Elon. All right. I can acknowledge that. I've got that covered. All right. And so great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I want to thank you for indulging me in that segment. I thought it was fun. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it, or at least thinking about things a little bit differently, because it's an interesting idea. So I want to thank everybody over at locals.com for supporting the show. Before I do, however, I want to say a very special shout out to a viewer, somebody who watches the show very regularly. I got a nice message over from Doug, who actually said that yesterday was your birthday. And so I'm wishing you a very, very happy birthday, Jacqueline. Happy birthday. Love the R&R team. Of course, that is everybody here at my office, and Miss Faith and Ma Fox. Happy birthday, Jacqueline. I understand that you are somebody who's traveling now with a group of friends. I think right now you've got Colleen, Connie, Lise, Kathy. You're all going down to a little bit of an event, and I want to wish you guys a very safe and happy birthday, very safe trip. A lot of fun, a lot of enjoyment. Jacqueline turned 70 yesterday, and so happy birthday to Jacqueline one more time. Very, very appreciative of your support of the program, and we're glad that you are with us. Happy birthday. And so that is it for the show, everybody. Before we get out of here, quick thank you to all of our Locals subscribers. We got Osak, saw him today. We got Seawolf. Who else do we have here? What's up, Ma Fox? Hello, Faith Joy. Big hello over to Farmer's Daughter number 4. We've got Tawny13_shades. Think I saw him today. We got Clock Doc in the house. We've got Mad Max 07, Fair Dinkdom, Bumma Lickit, Kelly Stew, Zuck. We also have a couple people who signed up. We got The Sun Chaser, and we have Beyond Basic. Want to welcome you both to the community. And the community's down right here at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Big hello to Patriot Musk. Saw you, Ian Froms, Freddie Bastiat, Baron Sky, Mr. Zeus, and Miklenko, and many others who are supporting us on our community. It's not a cloud community, but it is a community over at locals.com. Find our group called Watching the Watchers. Support the show. If you want to do that, you can ask questions as we go throughout the show like we just did today, but you can also get a free copy of my book. It's called Beginning to Winning: How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Justice System. Also grab a copy of my PowerPoint slides. Get a copy of my impeachment party documents if you want to impeach anybody. Also, you can look at my existence system template. This thing is available for free for download. A little personal productivity tool that I use on a daily basis. You can download that. Also, share links and comment throughout the day and meet great people. There's a lot of them over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Put that in your browser and go and check us out. All right. And so before we wrap up, one final reminder that I am a criminal defense lawyer here at the R&R Law Group, and we love to help good people who have been charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. And so if you happen to know anybody who's been charged with a crime in the state of Arizona, we would be honored and humbled if you trusted us enough to send them our direction so that we can help. We help people with anything resulting from criminal charges, things like DUIs, drugs, domestic violence, minor felonies, major felonies, misdemeanor offenses, traffic offenses, driving on suspended licenses, criminal speeding, reckless driving, all that stuff. We can help with it. We also help people restore their rights. So if you want to clear up an old record and restore your right to vote, restore your right to possess a firearm, get some of those fundamental rights back, we can help with that as well as removing mugshots off of the internet. So anything in between. If you know a good person, somebody who needs a little bit of help navigating through the justice system, we'll take very good care of them. We offer free case evaluations. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we love to help. So give us a call. Appreciate your referrals. It really does mean the world to us. And so that's it for me, everybody. I want to thank you for tuning in. Been a long week. I hope that everybody gets some rest. In particular, Eric Nelson and the prosecutors, because they're going to be back next week. And it's going to be another barn burner. So we're going to be back covering all of that. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate all the love, all the likes. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Have a very wonderful night, restful sleep, unplug from politics a little bit, and we'll see you right back here next week. Bye-bye. Wait, what time? 4 p.m. Arizona time, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain time, 6 p.m. Central time, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And now I'm out of here, everybody. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye-bye.